Hi, I'm Paul Gray. Come explore Alaska with us and discover the diversity of its culture. In the land of the people of the far north, we'll travel 13,000 miles of roads to more than 500,000 square miles of Alaska's wilderness. From tundra to mountains, oceans, villages, and towns, from art to wildlife, glaciers to thousands of miles of rivers and lakes. Alaska is a place that breeds discovery.
You are about to take a journey of discovery of wildlife, geographic beauty, history, and native culture. Sit back and come with us to a coastal Alaskan cornucopia of a world that is a part of all of us. Valdez, Alaska is a little fish in a big pond. But don't let its size mislead you. Besides being a harbor that is a gateway to Prince William Sound, one of the most scenic places on Earth, it offers treasures to discover. Consider this. Valdez, a town that you can walk across in a matter of minutes, offers a college, a museum of renown, and an annual National Theater Conference. Oh, and you can still go fishing, halibut, salmon, you know, the average Alaskan fare. The big pond where Valdez is located is called Prince William Sound at the northern end of the Gulf of Alaska. This spectacular body of water encompasses 15,000 square miles and exhibits crystal blue glaciers, high mountains, lush forest, and thousands of bays and islands. It is also home to many species of marine wildlife and seabirds. Whale watching is also another unique opportunity offered from many of the available cruise boats operating out of Valdez. You may even see doll porpoises, which are small toothed whales and often confused with killer whales due to their black and white markings. And where else other than Alaska can you get a sunburn while watching a mountain of ice melt? Columbia Glacier is one of the scene stealers of Prince William Sound and is one of the largest and most magnificent of the tide-water glaciers along the Alaskan coast. It is also considered a speed demon in the world of glaciers, receding 80 to 115 feet a day. Since 1982, it has receded more than 6 miles, but is still over 30 miles in length, 3 miles wide, and in some places more than 3,000 feet thick. Seeing a glacier calve is an experience you should not miss in your lifetime. Imagine seeing ice cubes the size of a 4 or 5-story house taking a dive into the crystal blue waters of Prince William Sound. You can see the Columbia Glacier's terminus 6 miles away, but your tour boat takes you much closer based on iceberg production.
Jim and Nancy Lethko are authors of 11 guidebooks and natural history books on Prince William Sound. For over 20 years, they have guided and charted trips in the Sound.
Well, we started sailing in Prince William Sound about 1969, and at that time there were no other sailboats in this area. In fact, we were told that you couldn't sail in this area because it was too cold, it was too windy, it was too rough, and it turns out it's exactly the opposite. Prince William Sound is such a gentle place in the summertime. Sometimes we have a hard time finding enough wind to sail. Now in the wintertime it's quite different. The Aleutian Low dominates this area and we have horrendous storms out here. We have hurricane force winds several times during an average winter. So the winters and the summers in Prince William Sound are quite different. The summers are very, very gentle and the winters can be quite wild. The reason we have these glaciers here is not because it's so cold, because it's not. It's because that the mountains are so high, and it's so cold high up on the mountains, and these mountains catch the storms coming in from the Pacific Ocean, and all this precipitation falls as snow on the upper reaches and then flow down the mountainsides as ice. So the reason the glaciers are here are not because it's cold at sea level, but because it's so cold high up in the mountains. The ice field that feeds Columbia Glacier goes clear up behind Valdez, 30 miles, so it's a huge ice field. Columbia Glacier is really unique in that it's undergoing a drastic retreat. In the last 20 years, Columbia Glacier has receded 8 miles. In other words, 8 miles of new fjord have been created in the last 20 years. And this is phenomenal in terms of a geological timescale. In geology, we usually measure events in the matter of millions of years. And here, in a couple of decades, we have a whole new fjord, 8 miles long, that has been created. So it's an amazing thing.
In 1790, the Spanish cartographer, Lieutenant Salvador Fidalgo, explored the sound guided by two natives. The group did not stay long near the glacier, concluding that it was an active volcano because of the loud thunder and great pieces of snow being flung from it. Not many lived in Valdez area until the winter of 1897-98, when gold seekers came to Valdez to follow the all-American route over the Valdez Glacier into the interior. Some planned to prospect in the Copper River Basin. Others planned to continue on to the Klondike. The route was based on an inaccurate description by U.S. Army Lieutenant William Abercrombie of a trail that he quite probably had never actually traversed during the course of his 1984 Copper River expedition. Nonetheless, the route was advertised all over the continental United States as an established, pre-existing trail. It was a great surprise, therefore, to the would-be miners to arrive in Valdez and find no town and no real trail. A tent city sprang up at the head of the bay, and thus Valdez was formed. 4,000 stampeders came through Valdez that year. Some stampeders stayed on shore to set up shops and other businesses. Others tested their luck and hauled their gear up and over the glacier on Johnson Pass. The glacier trip was tough sledding. Some people died in the attempt. Snow slides, snow blindness, glacial crevasses, and extreme physical challenges were just some of the problems. Supplies of goods had to be transported on people-pulled sleds. As many as 20 trips back and forth over the steepest legs of the journey were needed in order to get the necessary year's worth of supplies across. The following winter of 1898-99 was long and difficult. Huge numbers suffered from scurvy and inadequate supplies. Rescue missions were organized by prospectors to move sick people out of the interior and back to relief cabins in Valdez. In the late summer and fall of 1898, Abercrombie's men had begun cutting a rough trail through Keystone Canyon and over Thompson Pass. The following spring, the Army approved that route as a new military trail to Eagle, and upgrading work began. Recognizing that Valdez was a strategic location for communications and defense, the Army built Fort Liscum at the site of the present Alyeska Terminal, laid a telegraph line connecting Seattle, Washington to Eagle, Alaska, thereby bypassing Canada for the first time, and further developed the Keystone Canyon Trail. The latter, which became the Richardson Highway in 1919, served as the only viable inland route to Fairbanks until the 1920s. This became the first Alaskan highway, and Valdez became the coastal port for the majority of traffic going into and out of the interior. Once the rush to the Klondike subsided, Valdez prospectors concentrated on the gold closer to home. The most profitable gold mine in the vicinity of Valdez was the Cliff Gold Mine, discovered in 1906, about 5 miles east of Valdez on the north shore of Port Valdez. The Cliff Gold Mine resulted in about 51,740 ounces of gold, about $19 million in current prices, and 8,153 ounces of silver. Further away, the Elamar Mine, primarily a copper mine, produced as much gold as a byproduct as came out of the Cliff Mine. Of course, before the stampeders came, native people had lived in the area for thousands of years, and their descendants are still there today. The Valdez Native Tribe was created as a tribal organization of the Native Community of Valdez, Alaska. They promote unity, self-determination, and empowerment of the Alaska Native and American Indian beneficiaries residing in the area of Valdez. Their goal is to provide services that will strengthen, increase opportunities, and enhance the mental, physical, and spiritual well-being of their people in harmony with the land and continue traditional values. At the beginning of the 20th century, Alaska as a destination was due in large part to a little critter known as a sea otter. Russia and a few other nations were having a great economic success harvesting sea otters for their fur. The sea otter harvest was a great boon for the humans, but did nothing for the sea otters. Consequently, by 1903, sea otters were close to extinction, and the state closed the hunting of sea otters. In 1989, the harvesting of sea otters resource was reopened as a subsistence resource